I'm going to call a meeting to order, and we'll do a roll call. Serena Fish.
Here.
Jan Lancaster. She's present. Jan, we can't hear you.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
All right. We're just doing roll call. Okay.
Present.
And all right. Robert Bosquez.
Here.
Okay. William Bennett, not present, and Jeff Woodard, not present. So we will now go to public comment. And because we are live streaming, anyone who wanted to do public comment needed to register with the city. And as we didn't have anyone that registered with the city, we will not have any public comment. The next item on the agenda is board member comment. And I decided to add board member comment to the agenda because what I wanted each board member to have the opportunity of is to discuss anything that's on their mind, particularly with what's going on in our country, what's going on in the city, what's going on with police brutality or protests or anything that's on your mind. And I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to vocalize and verbalize any thoughts that you may have. And I'm going to call on people so that we can make sure that everybody has the opportunity to chime in, okay? So I'm going to ask Janet Lancaster to go first and just tell us what's on your heart and what's on your mind.
Well, like you said, this has been a very trying time. And I know, like many others, we've all been involved in a lot of the rallies recently. And one of them particularly, I want to commend Reverend Bennett for the rally that he organized and his remarks. One of them was very clear to me when he said, we are not against the police. We are not against white people. We are against racism in any form. And that is really, I share those thoughts also. I want to commend our police force. I feel they are doing a great job in this time where things are a little rough. And I think that they have shown their integrity, and I appreciate them doing that. So I think that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bosquez, you now have the floor.
Yeah, I kind of copy what Ms. Lancaster says. First of all, I want to thank the Bloomington Police Department for all their efforts in controlling the looters and the peaceful protests, being able to be there and help with that, as well as arresting these looters. And I know they're still working on that. You know, this looting kind of puts a bad black eye on what we want. What we want is, you know, we want to talk about racism. I think it's good that we're talking about this. Let's keep on talking about it. It will help. I don't know if it will eliminate it all. I know that's our hope, is to eliminate it. But I think talking about it will help ease the process and bring everybody on board to talk about racism, because it's a big part, not only in the nation right now, but here in Bloomington normal. I don't think a Bloomington department or the Bloomington department is so sometimes they want to categorize all the police like one, you know, like the Minneapolis Police Department. I would say that's not true here in Bloomington Normal. While I support the Bloomington Police, I know there's always room for improvement as well. So I think working together with this board, with Black Lives Matters and other organizations, I think we're doing good here in Bloomington Normal, and I just would like to see that keep the conversations going. And thank you again for the Bloomington Police and their efforts in this tough times.
Okay, thank you. Reverend Bennett, do you want to give us a sound check?
Mic check. Can you hear me?
Can you speak a little louder?
Mic check, mic check.
Okay, you're good. You're good.
All right.
All right, welcome. Add him to the roll, Nora. What we're doing right now is we are on item number 4 of the agenda for board member comment. And I'll come back to you, Reverend Bennett. So I'm going to give Serena Fish her opportunity to speak, and then I'll ask you to speak. I'll speak, and I'm also going to give Chad and Nora an opportunity to speak as well. So Reverend Bennett, if you will mute yourself, and I'll ask for Serena to give us her comments.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Everyone that I know of was by what they saw happen in Minneapolis. However, here in Bloomington, a lot of the reforms that these groups are asking for are already in place. Had a bit on chokeholds here for a while. Our emphasis has been on de-escalation. We've have a police chief who's doing everything he can in getting together response to aggression policy. The board that we serve on, the PSCRB, has been recognized as an early and a really good step in a lifeline between police and the community. All of our meetings, especially our quarterly meetings, the stakeholders that have been involved had a lot to do with implementing our policy, implementing changes. Things that they have suggested have been looked by our current police chief. Our current police chief actually, all the stakeholders had a say actually selecting him. So I feel that we're in Bloomington a step ahead, because some of the things, a lot of the that people are asking for are in place here or in the process. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for better. But anyone that's come to our meetings or our quarterly meetings, I've always, everyone that's on this board from day one left their ego at the door and has been totally transparent. We now have gone through 3 police chiefs and come a long way, and I hope to still, reform more, like body cameras. We've shown with the police help how the body cameras work, and we probably have more of those than most police departments around us. So I'm still very proud to be on this board, and thank you again for letting me be involved. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Serena. I appreciate your comments. Reverend Bennett, your turn. What's on your heart? What's on your mind? Anything that's going on in the country, here in Bloomington Normal, anything regarding the protests, the demonstrations, the police, just what's on your heart and what's on your mind?
Oh man, a lot. So, I mean, it's probably too much to really kind of boil down in some few words. I guess I would just say, obviously, a lot is going on, in our country, and kind of, I just I think as a country, we're at a bad place, but we're not at a hopeless place, and I think we can, both as country and community, we'll get through it, but it is going to take tough conversations. It's going to take willingness on all sides of whatever the arguments and discussions are, for us to listen, learn, be educated about the things we are talking about and dealing with, and then find solutions to move forward. In Bloomington, I do feel our police department has made great efforts, whether with this board or with other meetings that they've had with other organizations on trying to improve and be community relational based. But I do also feel that there's room for even more improvement. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing when community and policing can come together to observe what for our officers to come and hear from the community of what more does our community want to feel safe? What more does our community want to know, to be educated about, and vice versa, our community hearing from our officers on here is what we've done, here is what we are doing, and to allow for the voices to be heard. And then see if there is, there should never be a time when making a community safer via making the police safer or the community feel safer is an issue or a problem. We should always be aiming for that, how we can build stronger relationships, how we can be more effective. We should never get satisfied with we're doing all right. Let's continue to improve that. If we're doing okay, there's a reason for that, right? And let's improve upon that reason. As a Black man, I would say, though, we do also need to be conscious of that, things that happen even outside of this community still affect me, as a Black man, and affect most Black people I know, regardless of where it's happening at. So we also have to be sensitive to that as a police force and as a community, that, while this situation may not have happened in Bloomington, Illinois, thank God, and hopefully nothing like that ever has to happen, it's still a sensitive spot because of racism, because of injustices. Okay? And so sometimes due to that, you'll have things as you have now. You'll have protests in places where there wasn't, the same situations. I think we have to be tolerant of that because we have to understand the history of why that is and understand. I would say I operated one protest that I led specifically for myself in a church. And I would say when I called the chief and the officers, that he was very helpful, right? When I was out there, I seen officers, I don't know, in the parking lot building of, the Law and Justice Center, right? And I didn't even know they were going to be up there, but they were up there. And they weren't up there for me, but I mean, against me, I should say, but they were up there to make sure everything was going smooth. And so I appreciate that. And on my end, I made sure that as for the protest I operated, that it was a peaceful protest and no violence was allowed. And I made sure I spoke that very clearly. But I think it's also important just to hear all sides of the arguments and do our best to move forward, even as, this board to just make sure that we're doing all we can to better relationships. I think that was one of our initiatives, to make sure that we are pushing forward relationships between community and our police. And so I think that's something that we need to always kind of observe and make sure we're doing that to the best of our ability. And I'll stop my comments there.
Okay. Thank you. You weren't on the call when Jan Lancaster provided a compliment. And Jan, now that Reverend Bennett is on the call, Jan, I'd like for you to repeat your comment that you had to say about Reverend Bennett and the demonstration protest that he was in charge of.
Sure. In fact, I personally emailed Reverend Bennett after the event. But again, I want to commend him. We've all been to a lot of the rallies, and his was a very peaceful rally. And one of the things, again, that really moved me was he said that we are not against police. We are not against white people. We are against racism. And I think that comment alone really set the tone, and it was a very peaceful rally, a lot of communication. He went on and said a lot of other great things, but I really commend him. That was just outstanding.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. It's my turn for comment before I allow Chad and Nora to chime in for anything that they might want to add. But I'm going to echo just about everything that everyone else has said. The events that occurred in Minneapolis and that have occurred in Atlanta and many of the other shootings of African Americans, unarmed African Americans, has touched me deeply, and it's left me a little bit bewildered, a little bit angry, a little perplexed as to why this type of activity perpetrated by the police in those areas continued to happen. Vigilante justice that occurred in Georgia, and just overt racism that still seems to perpetrate itself in our country, to me is a scourge that we've been talking about for quite some time. I rarely post things on Facebook because I don't view Facebook as a vehicle for expressing political comment. I view it strictly for its social graces, that it connects old friends together, and you can share birthdays and anniversaries and graduations and things of that nature that are not as stressful and controversial and political that some people tend to use that medium for. But after the George Floyd incident and a few days stewing about it, and the video that went viral around the world, it compelled me to post something on Facebook that I initially just apologized for the people who tend to follow me and are friends of mine on Facebook, because I have friends of all different political perspectives. I grew up in Chicago, and grew up in the city of Chicago. And when I was 17, I moved to Jackson, Tennessee. Now I'll tell you that was traumatic for me as a 17-year-old at the time. And I went from being an urban kid to living in a rural setting, a small town, southern rural setting. And so friends of mine from both ends of the country have differing political perspectives, and I find myself sometimes skirting in the middle of and listening to two sides of the same argument. And so I tend to keep my comments to myself and just kind of observe what theirs are. But this situation that occurred in Minneapolis compelled me to speak out, and on Facebook. Now I speak out with my friends, I speak out with people that know me and whatnot, but I don't use that social media network to express political thought. But what I simply did was I simply went on to express my outrage. But what I also did was I asked for the help of my white friends who have privilege. And the post, while I'm going to paraphrase it, basically is basically that Black people and people of color have been fighting for and begging for justice and fair treatment since the end of the Civil War, and that's over 100 and almost 50, well, over 150 years ago. That inequality and unfair treatment and outright racism and bigotry have perpetrated the country for over that period of time. And while Black people and people of color have been screaming and hollering and begging and marching and demanding and rioting and for the end of racism, we have failed. And what we need is the help of white people who have vision and can see the injustice and the racism as it exists. My comment also said that Black people and people of color cannot change the hearts of people who choose not to see. And white people have a privilege that Black people do not have. And if white people can see outside of their privilege, then they can see the racism and injustice that Black people and people of color have been talking about for over 150 years. So what I did was I asked my white friends, and when I say white friends, those who are friends of mine on Facebook, and that's basically who I was speaking to, but it's a general comment that I'll even add to my commentary here, that if you are one of those people who has that privilege and can see, and I used in quotation marks, see the injustice and inequality that exist, then Black people and people of color need your help. And we need allies. And what I also added was that this comment may cost me some Facebook friends. And if it does, oh well. And that's where I left it. So I received over 150 comments, and I could tell that where the political divide was when I saw some of the comments. 90% of them that I got back were supportive of what I had just added. About 5% basically tried to turn the racism argument back on me, as if to say that there are Black people who are racist, and those are the people that do not see. So those are the ones that while I didn't unfriend them, I just know where they stood, and that's more or less what my comments were. So what I also added and what I provided was a link that basically was entitled 75 Things That White People Can Do to Help Address Racial Injustice. And if you want a copy of it, I'll be, just let me know and I'll send you a link to it. But it's called 75 Things That White People Can Do. And it's more in the vein of education, because where there is ignorance in the world, the solution to ignorance is education. And that's more or less what my comments will be to the board. I'll ask Chad if you'd like to go ahead and chime in, and then I'll ask Nora if she'd like to chime in. So Chad, you have the floor.
Okay, well, I'll be kind of brief here. First off, I want to thank you guys for all your support. I will admit the last roughly 3 weeks have been very trying for us as a department, us as a city. While protesting, I think is a great thing. One thing that will not be tolerated, and I think we have shown that, is we're not going to tolerate the looting, the damage to property, the destruction of our city. We care too much. We have too many officers here who actually care about this community. They can't stand by and let that happen. And I think we've got 90% of the community on board with us on that. I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was Pastor Bennett, and I couldn't agree more in regards to the community and the police. We have to work together. I've heard over and over for years that, yeah, we need to work together. We need to. No, there's no need. We have to. That's for us to prosper, for the community to prosper. That's what we have to do. So again, I thank everybody for all their support, especially everybody, all the good things that we had heard over the past few weeks for the Bloomington Police Department, the city of Bloomington. Hopefully we can open good dialogue, get some changes, positive changes moving here forward.
Thank you, Chad. Nora, do you have something you'd like to add?
I'll just add, first of all, it's good to see you all again. It's been a while since we've been together, even if only virtually here. So it's good to see you all. And just thank you for your service on this board.
Okay. In my comments, I failed to compliment the Bloomington Police. I've attended some rallies, the one for the NAACP, the two of them that they sponsored, one, the big rally that they had at the Law and Justice Center, and then the other one on the steps of the BCPA. Because of some issues I've got going on at my house with home repairs, it's kind of limited me for some of the other opportunities to be out and let my voice be heard. But I've been extremely supportive of what has gone down and the work that this board has done to help encourage dialogue between not only the stakeholders and the police, but the general community and the police in the way of our quarterly meetings, where we've opened up the floor for dialogue to better communicate and reach understanding for the things that could have created obstacles and controversy and issues between the community and the police. I've often viewed this board as one of a conduit to inoculate our community to help us prevent violence and destruction. And while we did have some perpetrators that chose to break the law, and of course I've never been in support of lawbreakers and looters and whatnot, for the most part, our community has remained relatively calm after those incidences. And I like to think that this board has had something to do with that. So we're going to proceed on with the rest of our agenda. But does anyone else have anything else that they'd like to add to their comments before we move to the next item on our agenda? Yes, Janet.
I would just like to request a copy of that list that you mentioned, and you can just send that to me via email.
Okay.
Okay?
All right,
Thank you.
no problem. Yes, Serena.
I would like the list also, because I
Okay.
would post it too on West Side Neighbors and Miller Park Neighbors.
Okay, not a problem. I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Robert.
I'd just like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to kind of, just speak what's on our mind. And I want to let the board know that I always look forward to hearing what everybody else's thoughts are, because that's the way we learn, is by listening. So thank you.
Not a problem. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next item on our agenda. Consideration and review and approval of our minutes. I'll let Nora speak to this, and we won't be having minutes to approve. But Nora, could you add some clarity to that?
Yes, my apologies. I'm kind of working out of a few different offices right now, both here at City Hall and at home, and feels like my car sometimes too. So I attempted to prepare those minutes from the recording, and the recording does not clearly indicate who made the motions. So I need to locate my written notes from that, and I should have those at the next meeting for you to approve. My apologies.
Okay, so what we'll do is at our next meeting, we'll have minutes to review from our February meeting as well as this meeting, and Nora will take care of that and make sure that we have those. So we will bypass approval of minutes as the agenda item. Okay, moving on to item number 6. Discussion of complaints reviewed, a general update of complaints received. So Chad, you have the floor.
Okay, sorry, I had to figure out how to get on the mic there for a second. Currently, right now, I don't have papers I could even show you guys. I didn't have a chance to print anything off, but we have received 5 complaints for the year. I don't recall what we were, unless Nora does, at the last meeting. I want to say we were at 3, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3, but so we are up to 5. COVID-19 has kind of put a little bit of a delay in us getting everything done with the complaints, just because of interviews and all that type of jazz. But we should have them, I would imagine, almost all closed out before the next meeting.
Okay, and Chad, to your knowledge, and based off the complaints that you have got, of the 5 that are currently open, they are all open at this point?
No, just 3 of them.
Just 3 of those are open at this point. To your knowledge and based off of your experience, do you see any of those complaints as a possibility of being escalated to review by the PSCRB?
I really don't, with the 3 that we have.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Chad with reference to the complaints that we've got? Okay. Chad, the next item is also general updates from the Bloomington Police Department. What are you guys working on, and what items do you see that we could possibly add for topics of discussion at our next quarterly meeting?
Well, first I'll give you just a quick update. We have hired, I got to go back here. I'm trying to do this without notes, so I apologize, but we've hired 6 people recently. Of the 6 that we have hired, and we're still kind of in a limbo land of getting them into academy, but we have a female, a white female, a black female, Hispanic male, a black male, and a white male that we've hired. So I think our efforts kind of working with you guys and getting the word out is really kind of helping the diversity aspect of it. We are in the process right now of testing a few laterals from outside of this general area. And then our testing cycle for new hires will end on July 1st. So we'll start another batch of testing there. So On the hiring front, we're really trying to push forward. We've got several retirements that are pending. We have one guy that just retired today. So we're going to have a lot of openings to try and get filled. On the second front, in regards to, I know I've given you guys updates on the wellness program. COVID-19 put a little bit of a damper on us there. Our first class was scheduled right when COVID-19 hit. So we weren't allowed to have the classes because we couldn't have the amount of people in it. So right now, our first class is tentatively scheduled for the 29th of June. So we're really looking forward to get that off the ground and get that program moving.
Okay. Any other initiatives that you guys have going on? Like you said, I know that COVID-19 has kind of put a damper on quite a few initiatives that may be going, but I appreciate your report on the hiring perspective, because that was one of the topics of discussion at one of our quarterly meetings, and where we requested the assistance of the community to help us create a more diverse hiring class, and it looks like you guys have been successful in doing that. So I appreciate where you guys are coming from with that, and that is progress. So anything else that you see on the forefront, or something that we could assist with going forward, and something that we can report out at our next quarterly meeting?
Well, I'll be honest, the hiring aspect is going to be a big thing for us. And we're entering a phase with the Bloomington Police Department where we started really growing. Well, that era of officers is getting to that point of retiring. So hiring is going to be a huge thing for us for the next, I would say, 4 to 5 years. I mean, we're going to be hiring a lot of new officers. We're going to be changing from an older department to a younger department. So we're definitely going to be leaning on you guys to help in any aspect that you can. I think it's proven now that your guys' willingness to step in and help out is assisting us. So we're not going to let that fall by the wayside. So I think I will continue pushing that with you guys to try and keep your help, and any thoughts, suggestions you guys may have to help us with it. I'm definitely all ears. I know Chief Donath is as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions from anyone on the board? Yes, Reverend Bennett.
I have a question, and then maybe a comment, depending on what the answer is. Officer Chad, does the hiring of the officers, I think you said you're trying to get them into academy. So has it been an official hiring yet? And if so, is there a way that you guys publicly make that announcements? Do you guys publicly make it before they finish academy? How does that work, as far as, is the hiring official, and do you guys make a public announcement of those hiring?
Yeah, can I add on? Can I add on to your question? Does the fact that that they're waiting for getting into the academy, does that mean that they are tentative hires, or are they members of the Bloomington Police Department waiting to go to academy? I guess that's in addition to Reverend Bennett's question.
Well, they are members of the police department. We brought them on early because, like Chief Donath has preached over and over, is we want the best of the best. We don't want C-level people. We want A and B level people. So we brought them on knowing that the academy probably isn't going to start when it said it was supposed to. So these guys have been doing a lot of stuff in-house. They've been riding with officers. We've been getting them some additional training. So they were actually scheduled to go to the academy on June 28th. That just got pushed back 2 days ago. Now they won't be going until July 12th. So, but they're with us. We're getting them involved in whatever we can to kind of boost their training before they ever get the in-house training that they'll take place at the academy for 14 weeks.
Okay. Reverend Bennett, did that answer your question?
Yeah, just as far as the public announcement, have you guys made an announcement to the community of these hirings?
I don't know if John has put something out in regards to the officers. We typically don't put like a face, name, and everything like on Facebook or anything like that, just for, I mean, these are brand new officers. They don't know exactly what they're getting into and all that type of jazz yet. So we don't want to, I don't know what the right word is, just to publicly put them out there. I will check with John though, just to make sure that we get it out that yes, we have hired 4 new officers, 5 new officers, and all that type of jazz. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to say and I definitely can understand why maybe at the time until the academy's done, until they're officially in and good, why you might not want to give the names and stuff out like that. But just because of the work that Chief Dan and the Bloomington Police Department, along with the board, and even coming to the board and expressing how much they wanted diversity, I think especially where our community is at, I think it's very important that the community sees the changes that you guys, or the additions that you guys are trying to make the Bloomington Police Department a better department and a more diverse. I even think it is a good and maybe necessary idea that even if you didn't put the names in, but establishing that you have hired more officers, and that however many of those officers are minorities, and that however many of those officers are female. I think that's very good, because one way to, if I can say it like this, combat those who may kind of be against any concept or idea of policing for whatever reason, is to show them, regardless of that mindset or nature, we are moving in the direction that we ultimately want to be, and having a diverse community, therefore having a diverse police force. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I just feel like if the officers, if our department was seeking to diversify our police department, made efforts to do so, and then has actually made good on that effort, even in the interim, our community needs to know that, see that. So whenever we have forums or any of those things, and hey, well, what have you guys done? Well, here's what we put out, whether it's in a pantograph, City of Bloomington, something. I just think it's important, because that would be good to me. That would mean that I could show to someone who's saying, well, what is our police department doing? Well, what I can show is when our chief says he wants to do this, they actually did it. So if there's something over here that we can agree on too, and he says, I'm gonna do that, we can actually trust that they're gonna make the effort to do it, because we've seen it here. And I think hiring a Black male officer, hiring a female officer, hiring a Hispanic officer, I think I heard you say as well, I think those are all good things, and shows kind of that you guys backed up what you were saying you wanted to do.
Very good. Any other comments? Serena first, then Robert.
Yeah, I agree with Reverend Bennett, because diversity in the department was something that stakeholders wanted and came to us and asked in quarterly meetings. We made it a point of passing out, the police made a point of passing out information on starting salaries, where they could be in a few years and stuff. So I agree with Reverend Bennett, maybe not now as far as names, but that this is one of the steps that we've taken, or the police department has taken. Stakeholders asked for it, and this is where we are on this particular platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena. Robert?
Officer Walmsley, my question would be, what immediate challenges does the Bloomington Police Department see that we can assist with as far as the community part? Get word out, or what can we do? How can we work together to help either bridge the community and the police department together with the immediate challenges that you guys see, or the near future challenges?
I think one of the big things is that I think you guys are going to be relied upon a lot by us, is to kind of get this conversation regarding racism going. We got a lot of people that I've seen recently that they'll be very vocal about it, but nobody really reaches out and wants to sit down with us to talk about it. And I know Chief Donath, we've talked about that in the past. There's a lot of people that talk about it, but nobody ever approaches us. We're always, seems like, the ones that have to get out there and approach them. So we would love to sit down and get with a lot of people in regards to this, see what we can work out and move forward. we don't want the animosity in the community or anything like that. We want to work together. We got a really good group of guys here at the department, I feel, that are on board with us as well. So I think we will be reaching out, relying upon you guys to kind of help us get together with the right people to sit down and have these conversations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we move to the next item on the agenda? And if I may add, as we get to our agenda item number 11, which is our next meeting dates and times, including agenda for quarterly meeting, I think that the hiring issue and what we have done as far as the hiring that has been done, that should definitely be something that we discuss at and bring forward at our next quarterly meeting. Okay, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the annual report review and approval. I trust that everyone got a copy of my report that with your approval, I'll ask for Nora to arrange a meeting with the mayor and city council to make a presentation of this report as we did last year. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read it. And what I would like for you guys to do is to comment on it at the end of the of my reading of it for anything that I may have missed. And with then at the end, I'll ask for a motion to approve the annual report or approve it as amended, get a second, and then we would vote on the report. Okay, so it's to Mayor Terry Renner, City Council, City Manager, from Arthur E. Taylor, Chairman of the Public Safety Community Relations Board. The subject being the 2019 Public Safety Community Relations Board Annual Report. It is dated today, June 18, 2020. This annual report is intended to provide a brief summary of activities of the Public Safety and Community Relations Board, PSCRB, for 2019. Highlights: review of board rules and materials developed, review of monthly and quarterly meeting dates, presentations to and feedback from the community, report on complaints presented, board rule amendments, review of the establishment of board rules and materials developed. The PSCRB held its first meeting of the year on January 9, 2019. The board was sworn in, introductions of the board members, staff, and Bloomington Police Department chief and assistant chiefs. Enacting ordinance was reviewed. Discussions were coordinated on topics that included confirmation of chair and vice chair, discussion of draft board rules, future meeting dates and times, future meeting dates. PSCRB chair and vice chair were confirmed and board rules were reviewed. Community posters and brochures were reviewed. The review of monthly and quarterly meeting dates. The PSCRB established monthly meetings for the second Wednesday of each month. Quarterly meetings were scheduled for the third Wednesday of each month. Meeting places were alternated between City Hall, the YWCA Community Room, Wayman AME Church, Mount Pisgah Baptist Church, Mid-Central Community Action, and City of Refuge Ministries. Presentations to and feedback from the community. Monthly meetings included reports from the Bloomington Police Department on the number of complaints received in previous months, year to date and pending investigation, Future meeting dates, locations, and pending discussions items were also discussed. Bloomington Police reported that for 2019, there were 11 total complaints received, compared with 20 complaints in 2018 and 15 in 2017. Topics at quarterly meetings included introduction of board members, review of enacting ordinance, review of board rules, review of PSCRB posters and brochures, review of Bloomington Police Department complaint review process, review of the PSCRB requests for review process, presentation on community policing, presentation on police recruiting, application process, and qualifications for becoming a Bloomington police officer, community forum on hiring of the next Bloomington police chief, presentation on Axon body-worn cameras, presentation of the PSCRB 5 questions to stakeholders and community. Is there clarity that the PSCRB cannot review complaints until an initial complaint is filed with the Bloomington Police Department? Is there clarity that the Bloomington Police Department sends its response? A person must complete a PSCRB form to request and review by the PSCRB. Are fears of completing a PSCRB form being addressed by the processes and Bloomington Police Department and PSCRBs have established? Do stakeholder groups still believe a need exists for the PSCRB? If so, why have no complaints been received? Suggestions and questions. Feedback on questions from the community was received well by the board, and actions taken from suggestions. Report on complaints presented. The PSCRB received its first request for review in January 2019 through the City Legal Department, case number 19-R-001. The board reviewed the citizen request for review and requested additional documents from the Bloomington Police Department and Legal Department. Following established board rules and maintaining confidentiality guidelines, the board found the Bloomington Police Department had followed its complaint review process, exonerating the police officer in question, and did not recommend any policy or practice revisions. The PSCRB received its second request for review in December 2019 through the City Legal Department, case number 19-R-002. Information was gathered and prepared for review of the board, which occurred in January 2020. This is a special note, which is why it's double starred. Results will also be included in the annual report for 2020. Following all established board rules and maintaining the confidentiality guidelines, the board found the Bloomington Police Department had followed its complaint review process, exonerating the police officer in question. The board did recommend that policy language be written to ensure the timeliness of communication to citizens when their Illinois Vehicle Code violations are voided, canceled, or removed. These results were communicated to the citizen with copies of the communication sent to the city manager and the Bloomington Police Department. Action items: the board rules announced, the board rule recommendation, amendment recommendations. The PSCRB recommended the following board rules amendments, which were approved in 2019 by the City Council. And they were Chapter 1, Section 3, the first sentence. The board shall annually on the first meeting in May, elect its chair and vice chair, and add a paragraph to Chapter 1, Section 3. Board chair or designee shall be liaison to the city council for the purposes of reporting to the board pertinent city council activities. And then we also will have attachments of our current poster and brochures in both English and in Spanish. That's the report that I'm going to be making, or that I propose to be making to the city council. Are there any additions or corrections to this report? Yes, Janet.
I think it sounded great. Do I make a motion that we go ahead and finalize that and send that now? Is that what I do?
After we allow anyone else who has any other questions, I'll ask for that motion.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I think it sounded great. I think it covered all the bases. So that's my comment on it.
Okay. Any other comment? All right. Reverend Bennett gives it a thumbs up. And Serena gives it a thumbs up. Any other corrections?
I think Robert might be froze.
Robert, are you frozen?
He hasn't blinked in a while.
Yeah, I think I'm frozen, but I'm here.
Okay. Any commentary from you?
I think it looked great. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll ask for a motion that we approve the report as written. And then I'll get a second and we'll move on from there. Yes, Janet.
Okay, I make a motion that we accept it as presented and forward it to the mayor and council.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. I'm sorry, who was the second by?
Robert.
Robert seconds the motion. Do we have any other further discussion? All right, if we are ready to vote, I'll ask by show of hands, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand if I'm still frozen.
Okay. And anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. Nora, I would ask that you get me on the schedule so that I can make this presentation to the city council.
Will do.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving to the next item on the agenda. Discussion of the vacancy on the board. As you guys notice, we are now a board of 6 with 1 opening for a new member. What I would like to ask, and you guys have had this agenda for several days, is that do you have anyone that we should nominate to the mayor for admission to the board, or consideration for the mayor to appoint to the board? And I'll open the floor for discussion for any individual that you guys know that may be a candidate for appointment. Janet.
I would recommend Cinnamon Porter. She is currently working at the YWCA. I think she'd be a great addition to the board.
Cinnamon Porter. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, I would like to nominate my sister, Adela Espindola. She was going to attend our June quarterly meeting, or just, the one that we canceled, to kind of get I told her she would come, check it out, see what she thought, but she didn't have that chance. But she still is interested in serving if possible.
Okay. Could you spell her name for me?
Sure. Adela is Adela, and last name is E as in Edward, SPINDOLA.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Serena.
I'm waiting for somebody to come back to me. They were thinking about it, but I would definitely like, this group has been so cohesive and worked so well together. I'm hoping that whoever is nominated, that we all would maybe get a chance to meet them. I don't know, because originally this board was put together by the mayor and the city council, and there were I think almost 90 people that applied. But I'd like, this board to me has stood for everything that we were asked to be, and I would like to have the opportunity to meet some of these people and talk to them, and you could present our recommendation to the mayor and city manager on who we would like on the board. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, no problem. Okay. Any other commentary? Reverend Bennett, did you have someone or have a comment?
I have no recommendation at this time, but I'm willing to, however the board sees fit about us putting forth who we think, if we want to meet and have discussion. I'm for whatever.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's my intention, or perhaps I should say it may be the intention of when we get to the next item on the agenda, which is number 10, for the new board chairman to take these recommendations under advisement on our next steps forward. Cinnamon Porter, I've met Cinnamon Porter, and I think she would be a good person to nominate to the mayor. I do not know Adela, so I would like, perhaps would like to meet her, or maybe she could attend our next quarterly meeting or something. But I don't know if there's a timeline that the mayor has for appointment to someone on the board. And we may wish to put a blanket communication out that we are seeking a replacement for someone on the board. Okay, that was the only purpose for me adding this item on the agenda. So if there are any others, please let that be known. I would also ask that Janet, since you suggested Cinnamon, and Robert, since you suggested Adela, that they go to the city website and formally request nominate, or go through the nominating process to be considered for the PSCRB board appointment.
I will tell her. Yes, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is nominations and election of board chair and vice chair. As is known, the current board chair and the current vice chair are ineligible for re-election for this current term. our board election by our board rules should have been in May, but because of COVID and the cancellation of those meetings, we were unable to hold nominations and elections for the chair and vice chair positions. So what I'm going to ask is, as I will, what's the word I want to use? I will facilitate the conversation for nomination for board chair and vice chair, and then I will entertain a motion to select those people, since we are now in June, and by board rules, we should have elected these nominees to begin their terms in May. So the floor is now open for nominations. Reverend Bennett had his hand up first.
Right before I make my comment, I just have a quick question. Did you say the current chair and vice chair are eliminated from proceeding? Is that what I heard you state before?
By board rules, I believe that we have 2-year terms, and at the end of those 2-year terms, Nora, please correct me if I am wrong. At the end of those 2-year terms, we will have new elections for board chair. So that's the answer to the question.
Okay, and does that, okay.
All right, Janet.
Well, I would obviously love you to continue, but since we have new rules, or not new rules, but rules to follow, I would nominate Reverend Bennett as chair and Robert as vice chair.
And so Reverend Bennett is nominated for chair, and Reverend Robert Vasquez is nominated for vice chair. Serena.
You got me?
Yes.
I second that nomination. That was exactly what I was going to say.
I have a nomination that is seconded. Reverend Bennett.
Can I nominate Robert and Serena?
We can nominate as many people as we want.
Well, so, I would only say that, especially as of recent, I've taken on so many different organizations, one being an African American Ministerial Alliance that we just recently started not too long ago. And so that would be my recommendations. And if the board absolutely wanted me to be a part of that, then I would recommend Robert to be the president and I would assist. But maybe to keep it in line and step with what we have, then Robert and Serena.
All right, so is that your formal nomination?
Yes, sir.
All right, so Robert Vasquez as president, as chair, and Serena as vice chair. Is that your nomination?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Okay. Are there other nominations?
Can Miss Lancaster be chair, or she already, since she was vice, can she not be chair?
She can, let us go strictly by board rules. She cannot be nominated for chair. For vice chair. She could be nominated for chair and hold a different term as chairperson.
Okay.
Okay. Reverend Bennett.
Then I apologize, because that was kind of, Robert just asked, was kind of my initial thought, that if Chairman Taylor can no longer act as chair because of the 2 years, then I would kind of maybe switch it up to allow Janet, who has been vice, to then take that seat as chair, and then Robert or Serena to fill in as vice chair.
Okay, so are you removing? So are you
that she becomes chair?
So are you removing your nomination, your previous nomination?
Yes, I apologize. Now that I have a better understanding, I would suggest that the vice chair move into the seat as the chair, and then someone, either Robert or Serena, to come in as vice chair behind Jen.
So what I hear, Reverend Bennett, is a nomination for chair, but I have not heard a nomination for vice chair.
I'm sorry, then to keep it consistent, then I would say Robert for vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Janet?
Okay. I would still like to nominate, if Reverend Bennett is unable to take the chair position, I still would like to see then the possibility of Robert being the chair and Reverend Bennett being the vice chair as a possibility.
So are you removing your previous nomination for Reverend Bennett to be chair and nominating Robert as chair and Reverend Bennett as vice chair?
That's what I'm doing.
Okay. Serena?
I would like to remove myself at this point from being nominated because I think people on the board are much more, I've only been back in the city for a few years, and I think the rest of you are more in tune with the city, have been longer, have more fingers in more pies. I'm getting there, but I like the idea of Robert and Mr. Bennett or Robert and Jan, and removing myself at this time.
Okay. Okay. So what I have is, if I'm listening correctly, what I have is a nomination for chair for Robert Vasquez and a nomination for vice chair, Reverend Bennett. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Are we ready to vote?
Yes. I'm ready.
Yes, sorry.
I'm ready.
I'm still here. I'm just frozen.
Okay. All in favor of, and we will vote. Excuse me, Nora has her hand up.
You still need a first and a second on the motion. The motion on the floor being to elect Vasquez as chair and Bennett as vice chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Nora. Since Janet, yours was the original motion. Janet, is that your nomination?
I'll make a motion to put Robert as chair and Reverend Bennett as vice chair of the Police Review Board.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Serena?
Yes, I second.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion?
How long is the pizza?
Sorry.
Sorry.
You're making me hungry.
Sorry about that.
All in favor of Robert Vasquez being chairman of the PSCRB, and Reverend William Bennett being the vice chair of the PSCRB, please show by a show of hands.
My hand's up.
Robert, your hand is up. All opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Reverend Mr. Robert Vasquez. You are the new chairman of the PSCRB, And Reverend Bennett, congratulations. You are the new vice chair of the PSCRB. And I will say that it has been my honor to be the chairman, the first chairman of the PSCRB. It was my intention all along to run our meetings and to speak on behalf of the PSCRB in the best manner that I've known how. And I hope that I have done honor to the chair. And I thank you for your cooperation as your chair. You guys have done nothing but supported me for everything that I've attempted to do since I've been the chair of the PSCRB. I wish my best wishes to the new chairman, and you and I can discuss in the very near future any transitional things that you may need have questions about, such as communications that go out and preparing of agendas and requests for city council time and whatnot. And I look forward to continuing to be on the board and to assist the PSCRB in maintaining the dialogue and discussion points that we have definitely done for our community, and to be able to assist further in the furtherance of that dialogue. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor.
Yes, Janet.
I just want to thank you, Art. This is, it's been a great honor to work with you. And, I think that you were the perfect first chair of this, and you really led us with great integrity. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Serena.
Yes, I'd like to echo that. Great integrity, charm, and well spoken. And I'm sure that going forward, anyone, whether it's this current that we have just elected or the next one, you'll always be available. And I do thank you and Jan for your, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Reverend Bennett.
Yeah, quickly, I'd just like to second what Serena and Jan said. Both to you and Jan, you guys laid a great foundation as leadership over this board, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor and Ms. Lancaster, for your leadership. You guys have set the bar real high, and I'm sure I'm up to the task, and I'm sure Mr. Bennett is up to the task as well to lead us forward.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is discussion of future meeting dates, times, locations, topics, including the agenda for the next quarterly meeting. What we have before us is we basically have canceled the June quarterly meeting, which should have been yesterday, actually. And what we're planning on doing is rescheduling that quarterly meeting. So at this point, what is the board's intention for the next quarterly meeting? And Mr. Vasquez, you are, I'm missing him. Where'd he go?
I'm still here. I'm not
Okay.
sure what's going on in my video, but I'm here.
Okay, no problem. Okay. You may have an opinion as to when we want to hold our next quarterly meeting.
That's a good question. I think, you know, we don't know what the guidelines are yet and all that. So I think that's something that I think I'd like to discuss with yourself and maybe Nora, and to see what you guys think, or even the whole board, just to see, you know, how should we move forward and proceed for our next quarterly meeting, given the current situation with COVID.
Okay, Serena.
Yeah, I think also our next quarterly meeting, it's really important that the stakeholders represented. So like Robert, I'd like to see what's going to happen. I'm assuming it's phase 4 starting the 26th or 27th. And what are they going to say as far as meeting? But I think it's based on what's happening beyond COVID, but all of the protests and the things that are happening around the country, addressing the issue of racism. It's really, really important that we get as much participation with stakeholders as possible, as much as possible at our next quarterly. Thank you.
Might I suggest that we set our next quarterly meeting on July 8th, which was our regular meeting date and time, pending direction from the city. And at that point, we would hold our regular PSCRB meeting, and our regular time is 3:30, but I guess we could change that to 5 p.m. if we were to hold our quarterly meeting at 6, and a meeting date and meeting place would be required. So could we tentatively set our next PSCRB meeting for 5 p.m. on July 8th? Yes, July 8th at 5 p.m. with our quarterly meeting being held at 6 p.m. on the same day. Is that, I'm sorry, Nora?
I'm sorry, just a note that assuming we do move into phase 4 of the recovery plan from COVID, meetings will be limited to 50 people. So we probably still, if you want large participation, need to have some kind of virtual participation.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion around that?
I have a question, maybe, Mr. Chairman, maybe Nora might be able to answer it. So with, let's say we're not at a stage where we're opening up and moving things outside of virtual, is it possible to have a virtual quarterly meeting, inviting stakeholders and so on, or would they not be allowed into a private Zoom?
Well, it wouldn't be a private Zoom. It has to have a public component, just like this one does right now, where we're streaming on YouTube and then recording it as well and still allow for public comment. If we move to phase 4 and, you can have up to 50 people get together, the board could still get together. City Hall would probably be the best location because the technology is already set up here. But then your board would probably still have to allow for some calling component or some virtual attendance method for members of the public.
Okay, so what I'm not familiar with what phase 4 actually pertains. That means that we are precluded from having a physical gathering of people at, say, the church, for example, where we normally hold our quarterly meetings. Would that would be some, if we move to phase 4, that's something that is not possible?
You could have up to 50 people. So right now we're limited to 10 people at gatherings. You could have up to 50 people, but it is possible with the board not meeting for a while and the interest from the public that you could exceed that 50 person.
Okay. I'm going to leave the determination of that meeting space and time to our new board chair and vice chair for discussion. I'm available to discuss any of these items as you wish to discuss them. But these are all items under advisement, and Robert and Reverend Bennett, it's going to kind of fall on your shoulders as to decisions as to when and how we're going to meet in the future.
Sure, understand.
Okay. Okay. So is July 8th our next meeting date and time at 5 p.m. and we'll go one meeting at a time. So that would be the next regular meeting of the PSCRB, which would be July 8th at 5 p.m. Are we all good with that?
Yes.
Serena,
Yes.
Yes.
Reverend Bennett,
Yes.
and it looks like Janet has fallen off. So, but we still have a quorum. So, okay. So our next meeting date and time will be 5 p.m. And then we tentatively set our next quarterly meeting for 6 p.m. on July 8th. Is that my understanding, board?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Reverend Bennett?
Yes.
Yeah.
Serena, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our next meeting dates and times. And I guess, Robert, you guys can take suggestions from the group via email for discussion topics, which normally includes the call to order, roll call, public comment, consideration for any minutes that we have from our last quarterly meeting, discussions of complaints received. So Chad, that would be you for a report of complaints received year to date, and what the nature of those complaints are, and then what the resolution, the numbers that have been resolved, and whether or not any have been or would be escalated to your knowledge to the PSCRB at that point. Then we would the other items for the quarterly meeting are kind of what we have discussed, which I would suggest would include the general updates from the Bloomington Police Department, inclusive of the new hires, and reports on community policing and the wellness program. And then general discussion with questions from the community. Those are my suggestions. And you guys can formalize those and present those at our next meeting.
Got it.
Okay, are we good?
I'm good.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Serena.
Wrong button. I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right. And all in favor, show by hand.
Aye.
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 And Robert, is your hand up?
My hand is up. Sorry.
All right. Thank you all. Chad, thank you for your attendance. Nora, thank you as always. And the meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Everyone
you.
have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, take care.